everybody, it's Joel from the Board Game Mechanics. Today I'm taking a look at R&R Games Spike by Stephen Glenn. It's a game that you're finding on closeout some places. It's one that you haven't seen probably much, or I'm guessing you haven't played it. Why is that? Why is this game so out in the wild, and why are we not playing it? Well, is there a big flaw? What's going on with that? Well, I'm going to answer that question and more after we take a look at some gameplay right now. All right, so the game is Spike, and we have basically a board here that has a bunch of commodities in different cities on the eastern United States with weird little designs between them. We'll get into all that in a little more later. This is where you start as a player. You start off with a route card. Now, this route card's kind of cool because it has a start city, and then it has a cumulative score. So every city you connect to New York City, you get a cumulative number. You get to keep adding those onto it. So it's not a maximum of 7. You can get 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 points off that, or dollars. That guy needs to put some moisturizer on his hands. Then you also get 3 commodities you are allowed to deal in and deliver. So if you can pick the commodities up in a city, load them into your train, then deliver them to those cities, you get the amount of money that it shows there. Speaking of trains, you start off with a train that can have 1 movement along the tracks, as noted by the arrow. A coal tender that allows you to draw 2 rails cards to build your infrastructure up, and you can only carry 1 cargo at the beginning of the game. However, this is obviously upgradable. You can move your train up to 2 or 3 spaces if you get better at that. You can get 2 or 3 or 4 cards as the game progresses, and you can carry up to 3 cargo on your train as you go through the game. So that's all really useful. That's one of the actions you can do. You also build an infrastructure of rails using these to show where your rails are at. It kind of feels like when you play Ticket to Ride, you're building rails when you're really just riding a train. This kind of takes that Ticket to Ride level, a little heavier than Ticket to Ride level game, and puts it into an actual rail game. So we have 2 of these little trains. One goes on the scoring track, which also keeps track of our money, which is a really nice feature of this game, that you don't have to deal with paper money. You don't have to deal with having to fuss with the money. You just have a track. Then also you put this in a city, and I think I'm going to put mine in Indianapolis to start the game. Now, I want to connect my city, my start city, into other cities, so that way I can build my infrastructure up. How do I do that? Well, I do that with one of my actions, and I need to make money, so that's how I win the game. So the actions that I have possible to me include the following. I can get a free train movement, so if my train's already on the tracks and not resting in a city, I can move it 1 spot. I can draw 2 to 4 rail cards on my turn. That's one of my choices. I can set a train in motion from a city if it's resting in a city. I can move a train 1 extra spot beyond its available motion that was there for free. I can also upgrade my train like I talked about earlier, and I can build track. When I build track, I'm using those rail cards. So these are rail cards that I have in my hand to build the track with, and they come in different patterns, angles, colors, and they kind of match up with the board. It's a little tricky to check at first, but I want to go from Indianapolis to Nashville. So how do I do that? Well, I lay down the cards to do it. So that green card allows me to go on that green track. That green card allows me to go on the next green track, and then I'm out of green cards. So now I need a wild. Well, how do I get a wild? I put down any number of track with another matching track. That lets me go 1 spot. If I wanted to go 2 spots, I could lay down 3 cards that were matched. If I wanted to go 3 spots, I could lay down 4 cards that matched. So that's kind of the wild mechanism in this game. But this connects me into Nashville. Now, since I've supplied Nashville to another city, the commodity market there has their like kind of need being met. And there wasn't much of demand for pork already, so I only got $1. But let's say instead of going to Nashville, I went to Columbus, where Columbus is supplying a ton of grain and people really want it right now. So now I've hooked Indianapolis up with grain. I get 3 points, and then I adjust the commodity market as such, because now all of a sudden the demand for grain isn't as high. It's easier to get grain. But I got 3 points out of that. The big money's on those cards though. And again, money's how I do this, how I win the game. So with some forward planning, I have iron that I want to deliver, and I really want to deliver it up to Bangor, Maine, because that's really, really where the big money's at. So that matches my card pretty well. So as I'm building this infrastructure, I'm thinking, how can I get my steel all the way up to Bangor? So Bangor. I don't know how people in Maine say that. Maybe you can comment on that. So once I get there, I get $14. That's a big chunk of money there. So some other things on making deliveries here. I can't deliver to one city more than once. So if you look at my cards here, I have a bunch of places I can go, and there's not a lot of overlap, but there is some overlap in these cities that I can go to. For example, Columbia, I can't deliver both citrus and oil there. I can only deliver one good there. So that's kind of a way that you're limited a little bit, but obviously you want to try and get the higher value things there because you're going to get way more points. So That's the game. But how do we know when the game ends? Well, there's like a kind of built-in timing mechanism in this. So we're drawing our cards. How do we do that? We draw them from this tableau of 4 available selections. So it's kind of like Ticket to Ride in that regard, except for the cards don't refresh. But as we get through that stack of cards, I'm going to actually take these cards and I'm going to flip them over one at a time. So the first time I get through the cards, I'm flipping over that top card, then the second card, then the third card. And when the third card flips, I'm going to shuffle those into the deck. Then it becomes a little like Airlines Europe with those scoring cards. And I'm going to, once that third whistle card's exposed, I shuffle those into the bottom half of the deck. And then once the third whistle card's exposed, shuffle those in, put the other half of the cards on top of it, make a draw pile for one last time through the cards. Once the third card's exposed, guess what? Game's over. There's also a possibility that the game could end when someone runs out of train rails, or it could end when someone's not able to make any more deliveries. But that's basically how the game goes. A real quick summary of it. And here's some more thoughts on it now. So that guy who was doing the hands there for me, Mr. Hands, that's, actually me, because of the fun of, like science and stuff. I went really fast, didn't I? So I had to talk really fast. I hope you got an understanding of the game. I don't know that you're going to totally get the rules from this, but they're not hard to pick up. The directions are actually very good in this game. So Spike by Stephen Glenn. Stephen Glenn's made some other games. Rattlebones is another famous game of his. He's got a few other games out. This is the one that I'm the most familiar with. And I actually just got this one on closeout. My mom found it for me at Ollie's Bargain Outlet for a really good price. So she got me a copy of this game. I got it for free because my mom bought it for me. So promotional consideration by my mom. But this game is well in stock at Ollie's Bargain Outlets if you live near one for like $10. So is this game worth $10? I think absolutely it is. It's a good game. So I don't know why this game didn't go over any better than it did. I haven't seen anyone be horribly critical of this game, but I do think it's a good game. I think there's a lot of really positive things happening in it. Now I'm going to draw some parallels to Ticket to Ride with this one, and I think it's not as much because it's a train game as it is. I think there's parallels between it because in Alan Moon's games, they're economic games sometimes, like Airlines Europe and Union Pacific are definitely airlines games. I think this in Union Pacific, the train track cards and stuff, it just reminds me a lot, not of how it plays, but of the feel of Union Pacific, like visually. So I think Alan Moon is really good at using this thing of you have 4 choices on your turn, and you're going to pick one of the 4 things that you can do on your turn. So it kind of keeps the rounds going quickly. But you do one thing on your turn, then it flips around the table and goes quickly. So this game has that as well, where you do one thing on your turn. That's all you have to do. One thing. You make a choice about one thing you're going to do, and then you're thinking about, okay, what's the next thing? So you have to plan one step at a time, and that feels very much like a family weight game, like a kind of Alan Moon type game, honestly. But after that, kind of the comparisons to Ticket to Ride are not there. I think this game really is like a baby Rails game, like baby Steam or baby Cranrails or baby 18xx or something like that. Like it's a super baby version of it. And by that, I mean, like, this has the training wheels on it for sure. Like you're not going to get punished super hard and go bankrupt and have spots where you're just so money poor that you can't function. You have to make investments and stuff because it's basically like the money doesn't determine how you lay your rails and stuff. So it's a much more forgiving version of those games. Plays in like a quarter of the time. So it's like Express Steam or Express, Railways of the World or something. So, I mean, there's not really a good comparison to those either. It's kind of its own thing. But it definitely has the economic stuff and the markets thing and that all in a really compact package. So I'm going to get, I guess, into my final thoughts on this game. I think it's a really good next step game up from like even Airlines Europe and definitely up from Ticket to Ride. So this is something that, like, I think if you presented this to someone and said, hey, here's the game we're playing, it doesn't look super overwhelming like Feudum or something like that does. It plays pretty quickly, so it's accessible to people. And then if people don't love it, it's over pretty quick. If you get into a game of Steam, you can screw your whole game up in like the first round or two, and then you're kind of stuck in that game for quite a while because it's not a quick game. So this game's really quick, and I don't think it's going to punish you and make you uncompetitive in the first round or two. It's got a good overall weight to it. I like that about the game. And then also, it does really reward future planning. So I think if you get your initial setup of routes that you're going to build and commodities, and then you just kind of sit there and you think about them for a couple of minutes, think, okay, how am I going to get this there, but then maximize hitting these spots along the way? Okay, so I want to do that, that, and that. And then also it kind of, so it rewards that forward thinking, but then it also rewards players who can think on their feet because that market's constantly changing. So if I want to, like if I'm in Indianapolis and let's say Charleston wants, coal, and coal's at 3, and Columbus, Ohio has wheat that they're, offering that I can then connect into. And wheat's at 3 and coal's at 1. Well, obviously I want to try and hit the one that's 3. So it kind of can reward players who can think on the fly as well. So some drawbacks, and like going back to that actually too, this doesn't harm you as much if you aren't able to think as far out. So I think like Steam, I keep going back to that game. That's a game that the first time you play it, you're going to be terrible at it. You're going to be absolutely terrible at it, get slaughtered. And it's just about learning the game. On this one, the first time you play it, you may not win, but you'll be competitive because you can learn it quick enough and it's not going to punish you the entire duration of the game. So, the drawbacks, the cards feel a little thin on this game. I feel like this is maybe on the brink of when R&R was becoming this awesome company they are now. Like Rajas of the Ganges has some of the best components I've gotten in a board game in the last year or so. But this one like harkens back to, I love Homestretch too. That's another great R&R game that nobody talks about, and I need to do one of these videos about. But it has kind of the thinner cards. This one kind of has the same thinner cards. They feel like Game Crafter cards maybe, or something where it's like just not as nice of a professional finish on the cards. They're not bad. They're not going to get handled an absolute ton like Played Down in Tricks or something, but they are going to get handled. It may be something that if you love this game a ton and you buy it for $10, you may want to spend $10 on sleeves to sleeve up the cards. The cards are primarily the only component that I think feels kind of cheap. It requires players to be able to plan ahead a little bit. So the players who do plan ahead a little bit are going to do better in this game. It's not insurmountable that the guy who knows how the game mechanics work and has a totally optimized plan is going to win every time, but it is going to reward him for doing that. And then this game, so like this is one thing that I would complain about with this game is there are a lot of things going on. And so with all the things going on in this game, you need to be quick to make decisions to keep the tempo of the game going, but people want to really maximize that turn. So they're really trying to figure out, okay, I have these track cards in my hand, so I could connect into that city, but I could draw those cards and go into that city instead, but then it puts me this much further away from this goal. There's a lot of thought going on in your brain. And so if you play with players who are really good at using their intuition and saying, this feels right, that's not a problem because they go, this feels like maybe I should draw cards this time. And the game keeps going. If you're with somebody who's a spreadsheets kind of guy, and you know who I'm talking about, the guy who's like, I got to min-max every turn, he's going to start doing the math of, if I have the opportunity cost of drawing the cards this time versus laying the cards, but this unoptimized route will happen, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's going to be frustrating to you because the turns are supposed to be quick, and this game's supposed to be kind of fast-paced. It's not made for people to sit there and really think about, okay, I have this elaborate turn planned out. The other thing, too, is the board changes so quickly that it's hard for players who are going to try and be spreadsheet players to really be able to plan ahead because that market changes all the time. That commodity market changes all the time. So as people connect into other cities, they could be like, oh, I was planning desperately on steel being 3, and now it's down to 1 because this person connected in, and it's thrown off, a half an hour of thinking or something. So it's really a great game if you're going to be able to play with players who can play pretty quick and are okay with making unoptimized, completely awesome min-max turns and just kind of feel the game. I would suggest it for nearly anybody. It's not so heavy that it's going to be hard for any players to get into it that are just kind of borderline gateway gamers. It might be stretching them a little bit. So this might be a game that would stretch Grandpa a little bit, but I think he'd really love it once he figured it out. This isn't going to be a game that's going to replace Steam or some other Martin Wallace game that's going to really be like a heavy economic simulation kind of game. It's just not that. But it does give you a little of the feel and flavor of it in a quarter of the time. So that said, where I'm at with this game, well, I'm going to go ahead and say that this game to me is mechanic approved. I'm giving it a 3.5, 3.75. I know that we really don't do that out of 5 stars because I feel like this game is going to hit the table a lot more than Steam. It's going to hit the table a lot more than those heavier games because you're going to have more people around that can play an hour-long game that's kind of heavy, and you can have more people around ready to play this game. So it's going to get plays more than 4 times as often as Steam is in my circle, at least. So because of that, because of just it being rock solid in its gameplay If you can get people to keep the pace going on it real quick, without having to brain burn and min max the turns, it's a great little game. 3.75 out of 5 stars. I'm going to give it a Board Game Mechanics approved. I think it's an excellent little game, and especially at the price. If you can find a copy of this at Ollie's for $10, oh man, I would definitely pick it up. And those of you who don't know what Ollie's is, it's a closeout store with a very comical mascot. This dude has some kind of mustache. So anyway, that's enough of that. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys, as always, taking your time to watch what I think about this game. If you liked what I said or liked what's going on here, subscribe. Please subscribe. Or check out our podcast. Go to bgmechanics.com or find us on Facebook under Board Game, one word, Mechanics, where we do a lot of posting there and have links to this, almost everything that we do. If you didn't like what I did, maybe you'll like Jason. He's on this channel too. Jason does reviews of other things. So check us out. Like I said, thanks for watching up to this point. Really appreciate it. Take care.